Thank you very much for the introduction. Fantastic, fantastic. So then, I have done the Santiago Compostela, and if you want to clear your head, go and walk to Santiago. It is the most fantastic experience. You don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to be religious, but when you get there, you feel so fantastic. And I think Sevan's comment about courage is absolutely right, because I am totally convinced that every one of you in this room has the top job. You should have the top job. I'm tired of hearing women saying, well, I didn't ask for the job, or I thought I wasn't ready for it, or I've got commitments. Come along, we've got to get to the top. Women on top. Sisterhood, the subject of my talk, is really designed by the fact that I never had a sister. I never had any females apart from my mother. I was brought up with 4 brothers. I lived in a totally male-dominated environment. Everything I wanted to do was usually rubbished by my brothers. Those of you who have brothers will know exactly what that means. I was given no encouragement, apart from my mother, of course, but then she was a lone voice. My father worked overseas. I was on my own. But my mother was a very clever lady, because, as you heard, I'm a master, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later, of the Worshipful Company of Marketors, the marketing fraternity. But I've actually been in marketing for over 60 years, right? 60 years of marketing. And that's because my mother, at the age of 3, decided that she would make a little bit of money out of me. And I went off, and I ended up in every grocer's store across the country on a billboard, in a pretty little dress, with my sandals on, and the slogan on it, right next to my curly hair, said, served in a couple of shakes, because it was a cornflakes ad. Now, can you imagine using served in a couple of shakes next to a pretty young girl showing most of her legs in an advert nowadays? It wouldn't happen. But I started out that way, with my mother saying, you have got to do these things, because A, it helped the finances, but also she said, what's wrong with it? Absolutely nothing wrong with it. And my brothers, of course, thought it was extraordinary. And so sisterhood, I see as being our responsibility as women to encourage other women, the next generation, the present generation. I know we all have families to bring up and other responsibilities, but we must rise above them and sort it. And of course we've got lots of examples, I'm sure even in this room, of men who are doing their fair share of looking after the family, and probably doing it very well, maybe even better than we would have done it. So I do think that we must just assume that we are on top. There is no doubt about it. And the Home Secretary has mentioned Theresa May, who spoke at my dinner. I invited her specifically because she was a woman on top. She has aspirations to be Prime Minister. Maybe she won't be, but she has aspirations, and she's doing, in what I think is my terms anyway, a very good job. She is very visible. We know she's got great shoes, so that's always... If you ever invite her to anything, just make sure you've got good shoes on. But I worked in a male world, and it was telecommunications. I joined British Telecom. I was their very first marketing manager on privatisation, because remember, with British Telecom, you were a subscriber until you changed to becoming a customer. So you were just somebody that, if we cared to give you a line, you could have it, and if you cared to have a phone, here was the only one that was going. And I spent my entire time in the marketing department, which consisted, when I inherited it, some of you will remember, the Busby that was on the telephone line, and the carrier bags. That was marketing in British Telecom's terms. I had to turn that round. I went to meeting upon meeting with men, all men, mainly engineers, where they would say, my dear, do you understand? Now, of course I wasn't an engineer. I didn't study engineering, I studied marketing. But what was so interesting was that if you thought about it, if you remember back to the days when we had telephone boxes, red things, do you remember? There's a few of you still around there, because you didn't have your mobile phone, you had to go to a phone box. Why were they always in dark places, round corners, generally dirty, always exceptionally not out of order, and you, a woman, had to make a phone call from that box, worried about who was going to come in after you, whether you were going to get through, maybe it was an emergency. We've all seen Call the Midwife, hanging on in a phone box trying to get through to the midwife. It was, obviously, they were in the wrong place. So I said to the engineers, why are the telephone boxes in all these dark places? And they said, because it's convenient for the network under the ground. So I said, well, why can't you just move the network a little bit along and put it in a decent place? Oh, they said, my dear, you don't understand. It's extremely expensive, etc., etc. And anyway, I persisted. I really, really persisted. And I got promoted. In fact, I was sent to do my MBA at Henley Management College by British Telecom. They probably wanted to get me out of the way. And I had a fantastic time because I was with a cohort of people from all walks of life. I was sponsored by the company. A lot of other people were paying their own way. And we were given the opportunity to go to Russia as part of our course. And those that were self-sponsored said, well, I can't possibly afford to go to Russia. And I said, if we don't all go, none of us go. And so I went to the deputy chairman of British Telecom and I said, you know Russia's a great market for you when they sort it out and privatisation and things come your way. I think we should do some research into the international market in Russia. And he said, really? I said, yes. Give me £1,500 and we'll do it. And we did. We went. All of us went. So the Sisterhood there, and there were a lot of women, largely from the health service, a lot of women from some of the other sort of industries such as media and fashion. But we all went together. And that was a brilliant experience, as you can imagine. It was 1991, and things were just changing. So Leningrad would turn to St. Petersburg. And it was just a tremendous experience. So grabbing that experience and taking everybody there was very good. Now, going on from there, I came back to the boss, the one who'd given me the money to go, and I said, I'm back. I've done my master's program. And I've won a prize, which actually was the prize for the Worshipful Company of Montreal. So I was given the prize for my dissertation that I'd written about British Telecom being so absolutely useless at marketing. So I managed to get that. So I went back to British Telecom and I said, okay, I've had this, I've done this, completed this, won a prize. Oh, that was very good, Sally. We thought you'd like your old dog back. I said, no! I've had a life-changing experience. He looked a bit worried about that one. He said, well, I can't give you anything. Just go back to where you were. Don't bother me. Anyway, what I did was I went, if you remember, Mercury was coming into the ascendancy. Things were changing in the city. Things were going electronic and automatic. I managed to double my salary and change my job within the next 6 months. And I said goodbye to British Telecom, who had sponsored me. I will say that nobody went on the MBA programme from British Telecom the next year. So I stuck a bit from others. But I moved on. And that was a very good experience. Again, I was the only woman on the board and of the part of Mercury that I was responsible for. And, in the morning, the chief executive would come in and say, good morning, gentlemen. And I'd say, you just have to keep on, keep on. And the other thing was, there was a lot of talented staff. And what were they doing? The women were all doing the secretarial work. They were brilliant. And I said, you've got to get them up and out, up and out, up and out, doing other things. Oh, dear. So push, push, push. Sisterhood is about pushing for those that you can see have got the talent and need the job. Not because they want the money, but because they deserve the job. Don't ever kid yourself. I ended up doing succession planning, which is where every week I went to the board and was asked to suggest people that could be promoted. And of course, if I found some good women, I would put them forward. And you know what one of them said to me once? Said, "Oh, I don't think she could do the job. Her husband's something senior in IBM." I said, "Have you asked her?" No. You know, it's all those mindsets, and I'm afraid they still do go on today. Have faith in yourself, have confidence in yourself, and just really, really get out there. And how am I on for time? But you've got the message.